Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukatali.
And a very good evening to you and a warm welcome to Newsline Zoom. Our guest this evening is the economics person from the SJB, none other than, of course, Dr. Harsha de Silva, MP. Very good evening to you, Dr. Harsha.
Good evening, Faraz.
Now then, really, this program is all about just the one question. How does the government of Sri Lanka raise, $8 billion to $10 billion very quickly? What's the, how do you do it?
Mr. Cabral has been talking about a homegrown solution. In fact, in his 6 months roadmap, he said he was going to bring in $10.8 billion in Forex in the first 3 months. That included government and central bank new debt, plus you see export revenue of goods and services, remittances, tourism, etc. So we don't actually know how much actually came in, but we know that some of the things that he did mention, for instance, $1 billion from India, money from Oman, Qatar, didn't materialize. And also he talked about $1.8 billion in remittances in the months of October, November, and December. But we know that that amount would have been less by at least 50%. Because remittances didn't come in. For instance, in November, remittances were down to just $271 million. Usually it's about $600 to $700 million. December is usually a good month because people send money home for Christmas. And we don't know how much came in, but cannot be more than $300 million. So all in all, I think the homegrown solution has failed miserably. So therefore, I don't know what the plan is now.
Let's say that there was an SJB government in place. What would the policy be for the SJB? What would you all do?
You see, first of all, I mean, you need to look at why we are in here. Two key reasons. One is what is called modern monetary theory, or what I labeled magic money tree in my budget speech for 2020. I had said that this was going to fail. We were going to crash and burn because that is not something that a country like Sri Lanka could have continued to use and keep printing money. You see, hand over fist almost, because of the mere fact that Sri Lankan currency is not a hard currency, and whatever money is printed in rupees has to circulate within the 65,000 square kilometers of this island. And given that the GDP actually fell, meaning output growth was negative, while money growth was hugely positive. For instance, just to give you a number, money supply grew by almost 40%, by over 3 trillion rupees. And this money has to find some place to go. And it went in terms of higher prices because obviously, coconuts and paddy and rice and industrial goods didn't expand because the economy shrank. So therefore, it was inevitable that prices were going to go up, which meant not just for domestically produced goods and services, but also for the US dollar. So that was one major mistake. And the second major mistake obviously was completely homegrown, as they say, and that was the banning of chemical fertilizer and insecticides and pesticides. That created an unnecessary situation here. which then had a huge impact on food, locally harvested vegetables to, everything else. So these two things we would not have done. You see, we would not have done these things because we at the very outset said these things were wrong. Don't do it, right? So therefore, I don't think for us, we would have ever been in such a precarious situation. And you see, given the very serious issue we are facing in the external account, I mean, we are pretty much bankrupt on the external side. You see, because we have so many obligations that we need to settle in the next 12 months, but we just do not have the money to do so. I mean, the dollars, right?
So Dr. Harsha, are you saying that we have no alternative but to go to the IMF?
I mean, see, this IMF word has become almost a dirty word in this country.
Why is that?
I think it is just, you see, the ideology, right? And also sort of the triumphalistic view. Look, we can do it by ourselves, we beat the LTT, we can win this economic war, we can get the military to, control the price of various commodities. We can get the military to sort of, ensure that the fertilizer distribution is done, so on. I mean, I think it is that mentality that is stopping these people from looking at viable alternatives.
But sorry, the military can't produce dollars, though.
No, they can't. You see, I think the entire thinking is warped. It's warped. You see, talking about the IMF, you see, it was in fact the Trotskyite Minister of Finance, Dr. N.M. Pereira, who first approached the IMF in 1964 in Tokyo, even though the agreement was finally signed in 1965 after the government changed. And in 1971, in his budget speech, I think also in 70, what he said is, look, you have to be pragmatic, right? And we got to do things because not doing those things would create further trouble for the Sri Lankan economy. He was talking about it at that time. And the story that is being floated is that, look, if one goes to the International Monetary Fund, they will impose all kinds of conditions. And those conditions would be politically not feasible. For instance, they may say cut pensions or reduce welfare expenditure or increase taxes or float the rupee or increase interest rates and so on. Now, that is a decision that a government must make. You see, in the opposition, we can be critical. We can say these are the alternatives that you have. You need to pick from one of these alternatives. If you look at almost every independent economist in this country and those who are sort of studying this country have suggested you need to bring in fiscal discipline. You need to stop printing money like this. You need to have a plan that is sustainable. So debt must be sustainable. So therefore, certain reforms need to be implemented. Now, for us, there is another thing, is that what Mr. Cabral has been saying is, look, we are implementing these reforms. You see, we don't need the IMF or any other foreign consultant telling us what to do. We are doing it, right? So if they are doing it, then the situation has to change. Things need to start looking up again, but they're not, right? So I mean, I don't want to be accused of saying Harsha de Silva said, go to the IMF. I did mention this in 1990 November. Perhaps at the time, if we had some sort of understanding, some program, the conditionalities that they may have to face now would have been so much more softer. You see, so much more softer. But currently, things are very bad. So obviously, it's for political reasons that they are resisting the IMF.
But Dr. Harsha, Sri Lanka's been to the IMF, I believe, 16 times now. It doesn't appear to have done us any good because we're again in another fix. So we've been in 16 fixes before. And so what is there to suggest that this time round, the 17th fix, if we do go, will actually work?
No, precisely the point for us. See, IMF is there only to bail out countries that are in balance of payment crisis. IMF is not there to help build roads or to spend on rural development projects through Pradeshi Sabha MPs and so on.
Or even to fund loss-making state-owned enterprises like Sri Lankan Airlines.
No, and not even to help repay debt unless there is a debt sustainability plan. See, what we need for us is fiscal discipline. See, without fiscal discipline, we cannot expect to build this country back up again. You see, famously Lee Kuan Yew said, look, if you can print money and develop a country, then you're living in some dreamland. It can't happen like that. So let me go back to something I said. I said earlier that certain ministers are saying, look, if we go there, we will have to succumb to all kinds of conditionalities. Now let's take the case of welfare reform, right? Now, that is something that this country needs to do, not because IMF tells us to do it or not because anybody else tells us to do these fiscally responsible actions. So IMF is only to bail a country out. It cannot develop a country. No way. How can it? IMF is not a solution for this nation's development. IMF is, if at all, only to sort of throw a lifeline at us to stop us from sinking. So this country must begin to understand that development lies in integrating this country with the world. The only way we can come out of this hole is if we can actually bring in dollars that are not borrowed. So how can we do that? It has to be through exports. Exports of goods, exports of services, tourism, remittances, and such other means that bring in dollars. So we have to reform our economy in such a way that most of our productive resources are channeled towards creating export jobs, creating or producing goods and services that the world demands from us. And then the solution, therefore, is 180 degrees different to what they are suggesting, which is import substitution, stop imports. That is not the solution. So I am for a moment not saying IMF is a solution. I'm not saying that. I have never said it, and I will not say it. All what I have said, and I'm saying even now, is it's only a lifeline. It is us, policymakers, voters will have to sort of, brought to the same page and explain that this is a fundamental problem that we are having in this country, and we have to change course, right? So I mean,
and on that note, let's change course for just a second, and let's go for a short break and look at this evening's headlines from the prime time news team at Newsfirst. We'll see you on the other side of the break.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
Will the Prime Minister resign?
බැසිල් රාජපක්ෂ මැතිතුමා අගමැති වෙනවා නම් මම හිතන්නේ ඒක හොඳ දෙයක් ඉතින්.
අගමැතිතුමාට අස්වෙන්න බල කරන්නේ කවුද? අගමැතිතුමා අස්වෙන්නේ නැහැ. අස්වෙනවා නම් අපට කියලා අස්වෙන්නේ.
MPs and ministers assume duties for the new year. People line up early morning to purchase gas. Dr. Vijayadasa Rajapaksa writes to the Chinese president, who arrived in Sri Lanka on board 2 superjets. Jets landed in Katunayaka for 5 days. Is Sri Lanka in need of a system change?
හෙට මේ රටේ ජනාධිපති ධූරය රුසියාවේ පූටින් මහත්තයා ගෙනල්ලා මිනිහා හොරෙක් වෙලා නවතින්නේ. චීනයේ ජනාධිපති ෂී ජින්පිං මහත්තයාට දුන්නා. ඒ මිනිහා හොරෙක් වෙලා තමයි නවතින්නේ මේ සිස්ටම් එක ඇතුලේ.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And welcome back to Newsline Zoom. Our guest this evening by Zoom is Dr. Harsha de Silva. I suppose we better call him the shadow Minister of Finance from the SJP. Would you agree with that, Dr. Harsha?
I'm not interested in any titles for us. All I'm trying to do is to, share whatever I know, something that I've studied for many years, both, in here in the US, as, a person who's worked in development in, dozen countries or more. I've seen what happens. I've been a banker, and I do understand a little bit of what I'm talking about. And as a person who studied development economics for doctorate degree, there's something that I bring to the table. So that's all what I'm trying to share.
Dr. Harsha, everybody sort of is good at telling the government what's sort of the situation out there. But what's the solution? Do you think now, if we had some information that the governor of the central bank and the treasury secretary will be, and then this morning we had information to say that no, that's not going to be the case because the cabinet have got all sorts of other things to discuss, but not this. Surely this is the main thing. This is the main ticket that they ought to be discussing. Certainly, from our point of view, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's irresponsible, to say the least. Irresponsible. I mean, this is not how to govern a country. You see, I mean, I am getting calls seriously from patients, cancer patients from the Maragama hospital saying they don't have cancer drugs. And today, Vegapitia had said, look, he cannot get dollars to unload or to import his LP gas. Right? He says he's even going to Sanasa Bank to look for dollars. So, Mr. Cabral said, look, everything is all okay. We got another, $1.5 billion. Now we have $3.1 billion in our reserves. So if there is $1 billion in the reserves, why are we still unable to release the containers from the port? Why are we suffering so much? Why are we not having dollars to import anything that, not anything, just even the absolute bare necessities, essentials. Forget about raw material for export. See, every day...
Dr. Harsha, there's some school of thought to say that the exchange rate cannot be artificially held at 204 or 5 or whatever it is, and that this 10 rupees on top that they are offering the expatriate remittances is basically a little bit pedantic because it doesn't reflect what the real rate is. And then there's a thought that we need to sort of free float the exchange rate. Do you subscribe to those views?
See, all you need to look at what the parallel market rate is, right? The parallel market rate is around 250 rupees to the US dollar. Okay. Yeah. And I'm not saying that that is the rate, but the rate has to be somewhere between 200 and 250. And unless we float it, we will not know what the actual new equilibrium for the US dollar parity is going to be.
So why would economists like Mr. Cabral and his team, why would they not consider the same thing that you're talking about? And you're an economist as well.
Yes, I don't understand. I mean, the only reasoning I can imagine is for them to advise the cabinet, look, if we float the currency, everything is going to go up in price, right? Every imported item will go up in price, right? But there are two caveats to this. One is that actually people are buying dollars in the black market. Many people are buying dollars in the black market. So some of that
it appears, I'm glad you're saying that, because we have some statistics to suggest that approximately 25,000 Sri Lankan origin students are studying abroad at an average of about cost of about, say, $25,000 a year. That's over $600 million. And obviously they're going somewhere, and maybe the Hawala system operators are making a big buck, because it's about 30 to 40 rupees per dollar.
Precisely, you're absolutely right. I mean, that is just one group of parents. But if you look at traders in PETA, or listen to Mr. Vegapedia, who's publicly talking about this. So what I'm saying is, so the prices are already taking into account some of that reality, maybe all of the reality, maybe part of the reality. So what I'm saying is, by having a new equilibrium is not going to mean prices are going to shoot up. It won't happen, right? Because it's already priced in to an extent. That is the first caveat. The second caveat is that dollars are not flowing into Sri Lanka because the rate is artificial and incorrect, right? So why are people not sending remittances into Sri Lanka? Is because they don't want to be cashing their dollars at 198 or 196 sometimes what they're offered by commercial banks. So if the currency is appropriately valued, all that money would flow in. Now, just to give you this one example of November, right? We lost maybe $400 million that would have flown in terms of remittances, which didn't come. Okay, for us, it just didn't come, right? Why? Because the value of the currency was incorrect. So if the value of the dollar was appropriate, then that $300 to $400 million would have come in. Now, to get that 300 to 400 million rupees, we had to go begging to Bangladesh for the second time. We had to agree to various things to various other countries to get $300-400 million. So it defies logic. It defies logic. And these are just purely short-term plaster solutions that are not going to fix the problem.
Talking about getting the math wrong, I think our control room also got it wrong, because they're telling me that I had less time than I have. But anyway, that it shows how confusing things can get. The problem is, let's say, Dr. Harsha, that the Central Bank announced that the exchange rate is going to be, say, 240 to the dollar. Do you think that our expatriate brothers and sisters out abroad there will actually start sending more money back?
Yes, they would. They certainly would. But I don't think you need to do it like that. You can actually, two things need to happen. First, interest rate structure has to rise because there's arbitrage to be made here, generating rupees to pay for, inputs locally is much cheaper than bringing the dollars. So one is you need to incentivize the dollars to be brought back in by disincentivizing the local borrowing. So that goes together with the incentive to remit the dollars back into Sri Lanka because you're getting a better rate. So I am not saying you need to devalue. Devalue is when you say this is the rate and you drop the price to this, 230 or 225 or 240 or what have you. But depreciate is a market mechanism. And by doing that, that will help find the most appropriate price based on the various components and impacts in the marketplace. So the demand for dollars, the supply of dollars, and the managing of the interest rates. So that would be a better solution because that would be a more sustainable rate for the dollar.
And Dr. Harsha, at the moment, we hear through the grapevine and that sort of thing, that there's so much of money. People are saying, look, I can bring $1 billion, I can bring $500 million. Is this a sign that money launderers are sort of making a play and that the Sri Lankan government is being approached by such types?
Bank when I was a treasurer, and he told me, Harsha, don't even open those emails. You will get these emails from various people saying, I can bring you $10 million. This is what I would like to receive from you. See, a lot of money laundering going on. We've heard stories about, okay, I will get $1 billion from this investor here. I will get, like you said, 500 million from that investor here. There was a story that we were going to get $3.6 billion. Remember that story? I spoke about it in Parliament. I went looking for that office and found that ramshackle house in Kaduela somewhere, right? And the deal was a fee of 7% for that $3.5 billion or whatever it was. So there are all kinds of, scam artists, con artists, money launderers, drug dealers, terrorist financiers, all kinds of people. And we got, grey listed earlier by the task force for, the terrorist financing. And it was a big effort by Indrajit Kumaraswamy to get us back, out of the grey list. So those are not real solutions for us. Those are not real solutions.
Well, the real solution, of course, is that we need to up the game, and I suppose to cut all our wastage and our vanity projects. We simply can't afford to have corruption and wastage anymore, can we?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is a prerequisite. You see, some people say all what we need to do is to stop corruption and we can grow this country. No, that can't happen. Of course, we have to stop corruption. All the corrupt people must be thrown in jail. That is only a necessary condition, right? But it is not a sufficient condition. We need to have a necessary condition of a corruption-free, wastage-free government. But we need to have policies that go beyond this rhetoric, on how to place our country in the global marketplace as an efficient producer of goods and services. You see, I have always said one thing, and that is we don't need to build tariff walls around this country. What we need to build are bridges from this country to the rest of the world. Look at some of the countries in our region. They're growing exponentially. See, look at the just take Vietnam. They exported something like $50 billion worth of telephones last year. just think about that number, right? Where are we, right? So, but that comes with an ideological change, that we need to free up this economy so that investors are going to bring in their investments, and those investments are going to be utilized in producing what are called tradable goods and services, meaning exports. So that is the solution, and that's the only solution.
Dr. Harsha de Silva, thank you very much. It's been lovely hearing from you, and we hope that Messrs. Cabral, Artigella, and whoever else it is will actually listen to what you're saying, at least in the interest of our country. Thank you very much. And that's the way it was on Newsline Zoom. Take care, and as always, God bless you.
COVID-19 සඳහා ආරක්ෂිත පියවර. නිතරම හොඳින් සබන් යොදා දෑත් සෝදන්න.